show are those of the host, guests, and callers who are responsible for their content and do not reflect the opinions of In Touch Radio or its staff.
All right. Good morning. Good morning. Let me say that one more time, everybody. Good morning. This is Attorney. And I am so excited this morning to have with me none other than the greatest co-host in the world, Sweet Pete Edwards. Good morning, Pete. How you doing? Hello, Pete. Are you there? Now you said you're a little bit sad. Now what's got you down, Pete? Mm. Mm. Well, you know what, and you have a right to be upset. I think anyone that hears this situation um, would be highly, just kind of just unsettled by the idea of one. You got, a life taken too early through violence. You got young children now sentenced to a life without a parent, and I don't know the relationships here, but if the surviving parent is one that won't, own up and take responsibility, your first thought is, well, what kind of life do these children have in front of them now? If this is the kind of person that's going to be, their parent and raising them. And then we've got the other issue, of course, is the black on black crime, and I don't know that for certain, but community on community crime, that's an issue. And then the relationship with authorities that is not, functional in this situation, such that this person is willing to go to the police and could work with them. And the young lady's name is Camilla Simmons. Yeah, is a young lady that was killed. And this is symbolic of so many things, Pete. And I know we hadn't briefed discussing this topic, but I think it's one that we need to touch on a little bit because it dives down into, I think, a national situation. And that is one where and I know this idea of snitching and ratting people out, but if we're a collective society, we have to be willing to engage all the pieces of our society to maintain order and to protect our community, which is law enforcement. Now, I don't know this young man or what the situation may be, and I will give some latitude for, he's in a panic, he's just in shock maybe of what to do or how to go about, I'll give some latitude for that realization that, listen, you can't hide on this one. You can't not be part of the process. You can't not come to law enforcement and be part of how they go about resolving this. And then again, the second part, maybe some culpability. If there's a crime that was being committed, he's a part of that crime, and that would be a drug deal, and somebody dies, he has some criminal exposure as well. Just a sad thing, and mainly, of course, for the kids, though, the issue becomes thinking about, and I like to take this place whenever we have a discussion, Pete, what's the solution, though? Uh, yeah. Well, I'm going to disagree with one of the pretexts of that. I don't think organizations can touch this issue. This is a fundamental parental value and association and society issue. And I'm going to say this: in the Black community, there is no trust between that community and law enforcement as a resource for helping me be protected and live a better life. And so when something crazy happens, you can't expect people to come lean on that. You think about what's happening, and this ties into this George Floyd situation. In the Black community, the law enforcement community has let us down so long, so much. There's a hardcore contingency that doesn't look to that community to provide it with protection, mainly your Black males. You think of most Black males, and we can discuss whether whose fault it is, one way or the other, but their interaction over their lives with law enforcement is not positive. And so you can't expect in crisis, when they are looking for some place to go find, help, it's a struggle for them to go to that place. But the second part is one of responsibility and basic family values that are taught from father to son, daughter to husband, mother to daughter, mother to son, uncle to nephew. That is breaking down. And I don't think we can look to organizations to try to fix that at all, Pete. I think those are family values. And if this young man had been taught basic sense of responsibility, and things of that nature, you're right. The mother wouldn't have to. But if he's brought up in a situation where his idea of family values and his are not entrenched in who's important and whatnot, I don't think in a crisis he's going to now have the ability to weather doing the right thing. And hopefully somebody can get to him that he knows and that he trusts and get some information. The worst of this, Pete, is he may think I can't look to law enforcement to handle this. I need to take care of it myself. And so I think law enforcement and the government and how it handles things has a big part to play in this. And somebody said to me the other day, about the George Floyd situation. How do of course they're going to convict him. I said, well, I said the same thing about the guy in New York, Amadalu. I said the same thing about Rodney King. I get so many times I thought, oh, this is obvious that, this person be convicted. And, that did not happen. So I'm not going to say he's shouldering this on his own. I'm not going to throw this to organizations. I say it's really a family value issue, Pete, that needs to be dealt with. You're right. I think the organizations are great as it relates to dealing with your um, government or institutional oppressors. I think that's where their strength is. But I'm thinking if this is a moment, Pete, though, where the uncle that's played a role in this young man's life, the pastor that knows him, the men who played a role in this kid's life, this is a role for them to play right now and helping guide this person through this critical space, because it's gonna, these are the kind of things I think where everybody has a role. And I agree with you. We'll get somebody on in the future, but this is an event that plays itself out all of our country where, and I'll say it like I mean it. Black men have not filled their proper role within our family, within our communities and societies for a lot of reasons, a lot of intentional, a lot of reasons why that not, but that's where I think we could make some great improvement though. And but I feel you on this one, and I'm hoping that out of this situation there's something positive that comes, and that these people are brought to justice. Yeah. All right, so some other stuff some things that are going on, around this doggone world of ours and community that's been jumping out at me. I tell you, let's start with, if you don't mind. Um, let's talk about this situation in Atlanta. And I call it the situation in Atlanta. And let me lay this out. So you had Donald Trump vilify the Republicans in the state of Georgia about voting fraud. And I believe in order for them to make amends and to save face, they came up with this voting bill that was passed to kind of show, well, we take fraud serious. We heard you, Mr. President, so on and so forth. That was my take on it. I thought that's why they passed it. But they didn't really consult or really talk to anybody about it. They just did what they wanted to do. And I thought that they left the business community exposed. I thought that was a very savvy tactic to do to draw more attention to it. So now we got in Georgia where threatened protests are in place, and Major League Baseball pulled the All-Star game out of Atlanta. And I want your thoughts. Why do you think they really did that? Do you think baseball cares that much about voting rights to move the All-Star game, Pete? If it were not in response to, I think, a Republican effort to appease its electorate. The implication here is, Pete, there is fraud in absentee voting, is where you start from, and that this is to solve that fraud. That's the premise of this requirement. Well, they've not established there's fraud in the absentee voting. So by not establishing that first, so they're solving a problem that they really don't have, basically. And that's really why, okay, it's just something else to have to, have to provide. So if you have someone who, for whatever reason, they can't provide, they don't driver's license or whatever, they don't have an ID. Let's assume they don't have one. So now to get a driver's to vote, I have to go do something else. I've got to go get an ID and then go vote. Let's assume just in that week, I lost my wallet and I don't have my driver's license. Before I vote, you've now given me another hurdle, and it may not be one that's drastic where it changes substantially, but in reality, the function of it, you could have voters who now have an extra hurdle to get over and say, you know what, I don't have time for it. I'm not going to go and do it. But the premise of this whole rule is there is fraud in absentee balloting, and no one has established that needs to be. So that's what gives me the impression it's something that's being done in an effort to just kind of cool voting. Now I'm open to going through each one of these, and responding to not all of them, but some of them, uh, that are in place that they did. The one that kind of bothered me was the ballot box, the drop boxes, restricting that kind of thing. And of course, the idea was, well, it's to make it safer for people. But the idea of drop boxes is it's an unusual time, place, all that kind of stuff. But again, just another hurdle. And there's the issue, Pete. In America in general, we don't have a massive. There are a lot of people that don't already participate in voting, that don't show up to vote already. And yeah, yeah. And so if you look at that one additional item that's placed in there, but we start with the general premise, P, with the Georgia law, and the premise is that there is fraud that needs to be resolved. And I'm going to run off a quick short list of some of the provisions that they added without first establishing we have a major fraud problem. They added this massive things. They added the that you now, to get a absentee ballot, you have to make a request. First thing they'll say is, well, that's in most states. But if it's not what I had to do in my state, you now add it, we're not used to. That's something new that you add. The ID requirement. Now you illegal to mail out absentee ballots. They severely cut back the drop boxes. They banned the voting centers. They expanded early voting in some of the small counties, but not in the populated counties. Well, guess who's the majority voter in the small counties, Pete? Any idea? Right, Republicans. So those are the kind of things that I think undermine their intent to make this a fairer, more balanced ballot. And it's really unfortunate that's what they did. Now, let's talk about the corporate side a little bit, because I think that was I thought baseball, let me get your thoughts on this. Here's why baseball moved the All-Star game. They moved it so that they wouldn't get pulled into it. They were like, look, the last thing we need is a bunch of protests, people calling out our baseball players, demanding they take positions. I thought they did it more to protect their players and MLB baseball from getting pulled deeper into a political issue. Your thoughts on that? Right. I think that, unfortunately, capitalism forces profit into every discussion because the end of the day, baseball is a business. At the end of the day, it's not a social organization, it's a business. And they made a business decision as it relates to how they're going to deal with managing their sponsors, all of the branding that goes with this. And they're hoping that by moving the game, boom, they can get themselves out the middle of that whole discussion as quickly as possible. But what about the other businesses? Coca-Cola, Delta, Home Depot. But that's why this morning, in case anybody's wondering, I'm wearing my shirt, Pete, and it says right on the front, black, just in case anybody didn't get the memo. Listen, hey, you already teased it up. Let's go ahead and take a break if we could. Come back on the other side. We got to talk about Biden. Can we talk a little bit about George Floyd and that trial a little bit? I know we didn't cover that. The border crisis. I mean, I got a list of things here. Matt Gates, I want to know your thoughts. We're going to take a break. We'll be back on the other side.
Welcome to Calvin's Barbershop.
You all got to see this.
I don't even want to know what you're looking at on that phone.
Well, you should. I was learning about the dangers of high blood pressure and that we need to get ours checked regularly. High blood pressure can increase the risk of heart attack or stroke, but this text program can help keep it at a healthy range. Just text Barbershop to 97779 to sign up.
I'll get right on it as soon as I'm done with this baby panda video.
Text Barbershop to 97779. A message from the American Heart Association and the Ad Council.
It's important to plan ahead for emergencies, like the storm. When it kicked in, we had a plan. We were able to get in touch with each other in no time.
Idea how to find each other.
The whole experience was
the
fine.
most frightening 10 hours of my life.
If there's one piece of advice I'd offer other moms out there, it's to stay calm and keep to the plan.
Message.
Some parents plan ahead, some don't. Make sure you know where to find your family in an emergency. Start your plan at ready.gov. Brought to you by FEMA and the Ad Council.
It may be hard to believe, but people just like you are already saving money. FeedThePig.org makes it easy. Their simple savings plan teaches you how to start saving without going overboard, so you don't need to start foraging wild berries.
I was skeptical, but these are actually pretty good.
You don't need to sell your soul to the devil.
$15 is the best I can do.
You just need feedthepig.org. Don't get left behind. Get tips and tools at feedthepig.org. Brought to you by the American Institute of CPAs and the Ad Council.
Welcome to Calvin's Barbershop.
You all got to see this.
I don't even want to know what you're looking at on that phone.
Well, you should. I was learning about the dangers of high blood pressure and that we need to get ours checked regularly. High blood pressure can increase the risk of heart attack or stroke, but this text program can help keep it at a healthy range. Just text Barbershop to 97779 to sign up.
I'll get right on it as soon as I'm done with this baby panda video.
Text Barbershop to 97779. A message from the American Heart Association and the Ad Council.
All right, we're back live on Intech News Radio, reality radio, where everybody can be a star. My name is Clinton Parrish. I'm a co-host of Straight Up the Middle, and I'm joined by none other than the profound resident Republican in the Tampa Bay area, Sweet Pete Edwards. Good morning, Pete. How you doing? Hey, listen, before I drag this thing out any further, I want to remind everybody about InTouch News, because I don't know about your community, wherever you are, and I know we're a national audience that listens to our show. InTouch News is a full suite of media services. And I want everybody to take a minute wherever you are and go to the intouchnews.com website. go check out the website. It is filled with all kind of information that is ultra organic. I call it ultra organic. What does that mean? It is unfiltered. It is just from the people. It lacks an agenda. It is pure information about a plethora of things that are just happening in the local African American community here in Tampa, but hopefully give you insight on how you can connect in your community. So if you go to In Touch News, you're going to find articles, you're going to find announcements of events, you're going to find podcasts, photos of events. And one of the things that's on there now is related to the upcoming 21st annual Black Heritage Festival Music Fest at Curtis Hickson in downtown Tampa, featuring G-Force guitar, Sheila E., Jonathan McReynolds, and Climax with George Spinderella Irby. So I want everybody to take a minute, go to that website and just see all the stuff that In Touch News has going on. Also, In Touch News runs all week, music and other shows that you can plug into. So it is really just a great place for information. And let me say something to the snobs out there, to you snobs. This is organic media, meaning we get to do whatever we want to do on In Touch News. Daryl and Tammy Johnson done a great job just letting that it take on its own life. And I just commend them for that, Pete. I just want to take a minute and say that as we come out of the break. Now, we got a bunch of stuff going on in this doggone country. I mean, we got what did you think the other day when well, let me go back. You want to talk a little bit more about these businesses and what's going on in Atlanta and their response to it. Okay. Listen, Pete, here was my take. I thought they wanted to, back of lack of a better word, whiten up George Floyd a little bit to say that here's somebody white who accepted him as how he was. They want to humanize his drug history and show that it's similar to what white people go through. So that doesn't make him evil and wicked. I thought that was what I thought she, to me, I didn't think she tried to overdo it. The defense really took it easy on her, I thought. But they wanted to introduce his drug use in such a way to say that this was not some guy under a tree on a corner just doing drugs. He was someone trying to get rid of that demon. And I thought that's what they were trying to get. Now, as far as the technical component of the role the drugs played in his death, one of the things that they were trying to establish is, hey, listen, you've done drugs with George in the past, and he was able to survive those situations. That's what I think they were trying to establish. But I thought it was very racial, and they were trying to whiten him up a little bit. Oh yes, I agree with that. No, listen, they had to, because if they didn't bring her in, they were going to bring in one of his buddies from a corner somewhere. The guy selling him drugs. They were going to bring in somebody that made it look really, really bad, his drug use and his history. And this was the best person I think they could use to introduce that history. I thought it's just a bad situation. They couldn't avoid it, but they needed to get out early. Yeah. You know, they might get the break part. I think that there's not enough, and just talk a little bit about what some of the other testimony was. You've had now about at least two, maybe three law enforcement people come on the stand beyond what should have been done. And they've done that, and there are going to be more of those. They haven't even gotten to the experts yet. You know, these are just fact witnesses, and they've been able to get each one of them to say, you know, I'm waiting for somebody to play the video and say, now mark the time when he should have gotten off his neck, because that's coming. And I in Mark, that's coming though. What is your take though on how the defense is presenting its case? Because they're so far in that with George Floyd. What's your take on that? Listen, you know, I think anytime you got law enforcement on the stand, and I would go a step further. I was involved in defending some law enforcement when I was an assistant city attorney in civil cases. Um, it's tough. Listen, I mean, we would tell people they coming up with their case and whatnot. We say, listen, if you think this jury here is going to convict these officers, you got another thing coming. You might want to rethink this. So I think I don't think it's open to shut out, but I'm hoping for the country, because Pete, this ties back into what I'm talking about, this young man in St. Petersburg. We have got to get to a place in the Black community, the Latino community, everywhere, where law enforcement's credibility is not in question, and that they're looked to be protectors and a resource that people can depend on. And one way they do that is when someone does something of this nature, they get held accountable. That's a big key, that they get held accountable. Like watching this case, I have some concerns, and I'm hoping that the defense has something real, because they seem to be going along this line. They're trying to paint the story that Chauvin, one, he was doing what he was doing out of necessity because of the behavior of George Floyd, one, and two, because of the crowd that had gathered. And he was responding also to not move. He didn't want to create any kind of, thing for the crowd to get more agitated. That seems to be the line of defense that they're trying to build, is that he was assessing that process. The problem is going to be they're going to have to put him on the stand to say that. And if they do, all bets are off at that time. Correct. Yeah. No, absolutely. And that goes to the credibility piece. And so you want people to pick up the phone and go to police in times of crisis, but police have to be responsible and do their job. And unfortunately, too often that's not been the case in the Black community with video cameras and a lot of this stuff now. Can you imagine what the story would have been if there wasn't video of this situation? They'd have, oh, well, you handcuffed him and he died. That would have been the full story of it. But I'm watching this case and I'm hoping young people are, and I hope we get the end result that we need. Real quick, if I could move on, Pete. Something that got my attention that didn't make sense to me this week. I suddenly started hearing the name Hunter Biden again. I hadn't heard it a lot going into the fall, except from right-wing media. But suddenly I heard his voice. He's doing interviews. He has a book coming out. And I'm trying to think, what in the hell is Hunter Biden doing? What is it? Might have been hacked. It might be lost. It might be the Russians. You think this is about privilege? On the criminal side, I don't have a lot of confidence in federal criminal investigations. For whatever reason, they just go too long. They take too long. They investigate people like 3-4 years over simple stuff. But there's no urgency. That it doesn't take that long to investigate stuff. You want to get to the bottom of something. So the fact that they're still investigating him for something, I don't know what, when, and where. It's kind of, it's too much. And that gets us over. You mentioned the Matt Gaetz situation. What is your understanding of what's really afoot here with Matt Gaetz? What's really going on there? I was gonna say somebody had to wake him up and tell him, "Hey, look, somebody's calling, somebody's talking about you." I thought that was very unfortunate. Hopefully, the guy, I think that he's in a yeah, mental issues. But we have a lot of radical people, and people don't realize these lone wolf actors are out there. That they, part of it is just a general protection and risk. You're gonna have some. I hate to use the word footfall, but there's nothing you can do about crazies and these lone wolf crazies. You can have general security in a place, but there's nothing unless everybody lives in a fortress. But this was the exterior, and it held up. You're gonna have that kind of stuff. What you do though is, I think people that put this kind of rhetoric in the air have to see that they have to respond. You just can't say anything anywhere. People are listening, and words do matter. And oftentimes, crazy words they lead to action. People doing stuff, and there's a responsibility that you have when you put crazy stuff out in the air. You know, people may act on that in a way that you did not, or you may not have anticipated though. Last thing I want to ask you about this morning though is, man, if I'm reading this thing right, these doggone Democrats they're running roughshod on the Republicans. They are looking like they're gonna jam any and everything they want on their wish list down the Republicans' throat. And I want to get your thoughts though as we move towards this infrastructure bill. I don't even think it matters what's really in it, because I think Biden is going to stuff it down the Republicans' throat and say, "Oh well, so what?" What are your thoughts on the way that they handle? But where the Republicans going to come out, because they're going to oppose this, it's going to pass. Then they're going to be a bunch of stuff happening in their communities. I don't know how they politically, you've got the they took the same position with the COVID bill. Is it looks like we got a Democratic wish list, and they're just going to, you're going to go one behind the other, passing these things without, and I'm just worried about what is the, or trying to see what is the Republican strategy in weathering this onslaught that seems like, this momentum the Democrats are picking up. Absolutely. Well, thank you very much for those kind comments, Pete. It's much appreciated. Listen, everybody, I mean, I spend my whole week waiting to get ready for this day. And then, Pete, when it comes, it goes by so quick. We're already at the end of our hour. Give me something that our listeners can look forward to paying attention to next week. I know the George Floyd case, but is there anything else out there that you think you all might want to keep your head up? Is it this passport for vaccines? What should people be keeping their head up and paying attention to as we go into this next week, Pete? That was a national Negro Education Fund. I think that's great commercials about it. You're right about that. I agree with that, Pete. Well, thank you as always. Thank you very much, Pete. Appreciate you very much. Let's thank everybody. Stay tuned for The Sole Purpose coming up right after this show. This is InTouch News Radio, reality radio, where everybody can be a star. We'll see you back here next week. Take care and have a happy Easter.